The scene begins with bubbles on the surface of the lake near the couple's boat, who are tired of waiting for the fish to fall into the trap. The girl, fed up with waiting and looking for some fun, decides to change her swimsuit. As she undresses, the boy feels something strange on his feet. Suddenly, without warning, he is dragged into the lake by something slimy that slides over him. Surprised and scared, he tries to fight, but it's in vain. The girl, thinking her boyfriend is playing a cruel joke on her, keeps swimming carelessly. However, her smile fades when she sees more bubbles rise to the surface and fresh blood beginning to spread in the water around her boyfriend's body. Horror overwhelms her, and she screams. But it is too late for him. The next victim is an alcoholic man who, despite his dog's desperate barking, enters his house staggering, ignoring the lurking danger in the shadows. Upon opening the living room door, he encounters a terrifying sight. Black slugs covering the sofa, moving slowly toward him. The man screams, but his voice is muffled as the creatures leap upon him, devouring themselves. However, his tranquility is interrupted when, at dawn, he is awakened by an urgent call from the sheriff. They inform him about a disturbing case. The alcoholic man has been found dead in horrific circumstances. Arriving at the scene, Mike is met with a grotesque spectacle. The victim's eyes, heart, and kidneys are missing, and the flesh has been peeled away, leaving the bones exposed. The police chief, suffering a terrible headache, is bewildered and worried, as he has never before faced such a strange and horrifying case. After inspecting the entire scene, Mike notices several slimy tracks leading toward the basement. The floor is covered with a shiny, viscous trail. However, upon going down, aside from the stench filling his nostrils, Mike finds nothing else. The sheriff, frowning, thinks it's a case of wild carnivorous animals, like rabid dogs or raccoons. But Mike, observant and meticulous, believes it is caused by smaller creatures. Meanwhile, the slugs begin to multiply more vigorously, almost as if they know that their numbers will grant them power. Mike receives more complaints about clogged drains and, together with Don, the plumber, goes to inspect. Don, flashlight in hand, holding his breath, discovers several animal carcasses emitting a horrible odora mix of rot and decay that makes his stomach churn. After an unknown creature swiftly and sharply bites off one of his gloves, Don, pale and trembling, runs out of the sewer, fear evident in his gaze. In a nearby house, an elderly couple also discovers countless slug larvae growing, infesting every corner of their home with silent presence. The gardener, ignoring unseen dangers, puts on a glove into which a slug had previously crawled. Suddenly, he begins to writhe in pain, his body contorting in an attempt to escape the torment, collapsing to the ground and dropping 2 bottles of chemicals with a dull thud. Desperate and out of options, he decides to use an axe to sever his infected arm. After 3 agonizing blows, fresh blood gushes from his hand, making him scream in pain. Hearing her husband's screams, the wife rushes to see what is happening, but in her haste, she accidentally drops a cigarette butt onto the chemicals, creating a fatal spark near a gas can. Mike returns home with his mind still full of the day's horrific images and tells his wife about it. As he talks, his attention drifts and he spots a slug slowly crawling through the grass. Out of curiosity, without considering the consequences, he approaches to touch it. Mike feels a sudden, sharp bite on his finger that startles him. Without losing his composure, he uses a shovel with great care to transfer the slugs into a jar, ensuring he does not touch them directly. Together with his partner, he rushes the jar to John's laboratory. John is the curator of the Merton Museum, and Mike, his voice brimming with concern, suggests that they might be dealing with killer mutant slug. John listens attentively as Mike explains the slug's unusual structure. Intrigued but worried, John recommends buying a jar of slug poison and some pellets at Dave's store. At Dave's home, his wife is in the kitchen focused on preparing a salad, unaware that the slugs have hidden among the vegetables she purchased. Seeing Dave arrive from work, she hurriedly chops the vegetables without having the time to wash them properly. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, John analyzes a sample of the slug's mucus. His face twists into a mask of horror when he sees a slug emerge from the sample and devour a mouse in a cage. That night, Donna sneaks out silently to meet her young lover Bobby. Embraced in passion, They are completely unaware that the slugs are dangerously crawling along the floor. Bobby, in an attempt to keep the mood, takes a sip of whiskey. However, as he sets his foot on the floor, he feels a painful bite on his leg, courtesy of a slug. Donna, panicking, tries to get out of bed quickly, but slips on the slug's sticky mucus. Desperate, Bobby watches helplessly as the slugs devour Donna, unable to save her. In his desperate search for an escape, Bobby is also caught and devoured by the voracious creatures. The next day, Mike arrives where the young lovers died, determination in his eyes, and tells the sheriff his theory about the murders. Mike is convinced that the culprits are mutant slugs, as they always find slimy traces around the crime scenes. However, the sheriff, a mix of disbelief and skepticism on his face, considers this idea insane and disagrees with Mike. Despite the sheriff's refusal, Mike does not give up. He receives an unexpected call from Don, the town's plumber, who urgently contacts him. They discover that all the animal carcasses, the garbage, and the recently found human remains are connected in some way to the alcoholic man's house. In the 1950s and 60s, there was a waste treatment plant in that area that operated for 20 years. This plant, forced to close due to the dangers and damage it caused the community, left its legacy underground. Meanwhile, Dave is signing a contract in an elegant restaurant. Despite the sophisticated atmosphere and hushed conversations, a headache starts distracting him. Quickly, the pain becomes sharp and persistent. While heading to the restaurant's bathroom, he feels something hot on his upper lip. Glancing in the mirror, Dave notices with horror that his nose is bleeding. This unexpected and alarming symptom fills him with fear. Suddenly, without warning, Dave collapses to the floor. Agony grips him as fresh blood continues to flow from his nose. The horror intensifies when he realizes that small larvae are hatching from his eyes. The scene is so horrifying that it provokes screams of terror among the diners and the restaurant staff, who quickly back away from the ghastly sight. With Mike working on his theory, he receives an urgent call. Upon arriving at the location, the chief informs Mike that the restaurant's food is infested with worms. Mike, however, remains skeptical and does not believe this superficial explanation. Dave's death, so abrupt and horrifying, reinforces Mike's belief in the carnivorous slime theory. The chief, however, still refuses to accept Mike's hypothesis and remains skeptical. Without any agreement, they decide to take samples from Dave to the laboratory for John, the parasitology expert, to analyze. After thorough examination, John concludes they are dealing with extremely bloodthirsty mutant slugs. These seemingly harmless creatures have mucus that carries parasites multiplying in damp, dark environments. Furthermore, being hermaphrodites, they can duplicate and multiply at an alarming rate. Aware of the seriousness of the situation, Mike returns to the office and contacts the pertinent organization in search of an immediate solution. But the nightmare is far from over. Mike receives a distressing call from his wife, who begs for help in a broken voice. Panicking, Mike rushes home only to find a desolate scene. The slugs have already infested his home's water. Unless the supply system is stopped, these mutant slugs will not only flood his home, but invade every corner of the city. The threat is imminent and terrifying. Desperation overcomes Mike, who wastes no time in going to see Phillips, the official responsible for the city's water supply. Phillips, however, is skeptical and stubborn. Once again, he dismisses Mike's concerns, calling them unfounded and crazy. He flatly refuses to listen or take action. Mike's frustration grows, but he does not give in. Desperate, he appeals to the city's mayor, hoping to find a solution. The mayor, busy signing an important agreement for small development projects, rejects Mike's idea without even considering its validity. Feeling helpless and out of options, Mike finds himself at a dead end. In a last attempt to find a solution, he goes to see John, a friend with knowledge in chemistry. John suggests using lithium, a chemical component that, according to his research, could make the mutant slugs explode and disappear forever. Understanding the gravity of the situation, John joins Mike with determination. Together, they decide to act under the cover of night to destroy the mutant slug. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, the Halloween celebration fills the air with laughter and colorful costumes. A group of young people gather for a party in the woods. Among them is Palmer, a girl who firmly rejects her friend's insinuations. However, the night takes a dark turn when she is attacked by a masked classmate. Palmer, terrified, jumps into the sewer in a desperate attempt to escape, only to face an even crueler fate. As the night wears on, Mike's urgency intensifies. Inside the sewer, they become trapped as the slugs begin to devour Palmer's body. Mike decides to go back, but Dawn has a bold idea. Use fire to cut the power cables beneath the sewer. Without hesitation, Dawn advances through a sea of millions of mutant slug corpses that fill the tunnel with an unbearable stench and a constant sense of danger. Finally, Mike and Dawn reach the spot. They use raw meat to lure the slugs to a single point, creating a viscous, repugnant mass of writhing creatures. As planned, John stops the car next to the manhole cover where the slugs are gathering. With great effort, John manages to open the stuck manhole cover, but this leaves Mike and Dawn trapped below. At the critical moment, the chief arrives, and, combining their strength, they help John open the cover fully. The slugs approach in an unstoppable wave, and Mike, desperate, tries to open the door, but a sudden flood of wastewater immediately drags Dawn into the water. Despite his desperate attempts to save him, Mike cannot reach him and witnesses how the slugs end his life. Mike, deeply injured and enraged, tries to climb through the manhole cover to escape, urging John to pour the lithium into the sewer. The fire ignites with fierce intensity, annihilating the slugs and causing a series of powerful explosions that resonate throughout the city, shaking buildings and filling the air with chaos. The chief approaches to express his condolences for Dawn's death, his face reflecting both pain and understanding. Mike, devastated and unwilling to talk, refuses any further discussion and, without a word, returns home with his wife. In their despair, they fail to notice that hidden among the rubble and charred remains, there is still one mutant slug alive,